Have you ever stood in your kitchen, olive oil in one hand, pan heating in the other, then hesitated? You remembered reading somewhere that it's dangerous to cook with olive oil, that it burns easily, that it turns toxic, and so maybe you put it back in the cabinet. I've been there too. And that hesitation, it didn't just change what I was cooking, it changed how I trusted my own instincts. Today, we're going to take that uncertainty and burn it away gently with truth, clarity, and science. Because olive oil, this ancient golden liquid that's been used for thousands of years, deserves more than internet fear. Chapter 1. Where did the fear come from? Let's start with the root of the myth, the smoke point. This term gets thrown around like it's the final word on oil safety. Once oil smokes, it becomes toxic. EVOO has a low smoke point, so don't cook with it. But have you ever stopped to ask, what does smoke point actually mean? More importantly, is it even the right measure for safety? Chapter 2. What the smoke point really means. Here's the actual science. The smoke point is the temperature at which oil starts to produce visible smoke. That's it. Does that mean the oil is ruined? Does it suddenly release toxic clouds like some kind of food villain? Not exactly. See, the moment oil begins to smoke, it's a signal, not a sentence. It's telling you it's too hot. Sure, but it's not the same thing as you're now eating poison. In fact, how an oil behaves under heat isn't just about smoke it. S about what's happening chemically inside, things like fatty acid structure, antioxidant content, oxidative stability. This is where olive oil becomes unexpectedly powerful. Chapter 3. Olive oil's internal armor. Let's get into the structure. Extra virgin olive oil is rich in monosaturated fats, specifically oleic acid. Why does that matter? Because monounsaturated fats are much more stable when exposed to heat than polyunsaturated fats found in many refined oils like canola or sunflower. But here's the part that blew me away when I first learned it. EVOO isn't just resistant to heat, it's defended by nature. It's loaded with polyphenols, vitamin E, and other antioxidants that actually slow down oxidation during cooking. In other words, olive oil doesn't fall apart under pressure. It holds its ground. Chapter 4. The research nobody talks about. Let me share something that rarely gets mentioned in the headlines. A 2018 study published in Acta Scientific Nutritional Health compared various cooking oils including olive, canola, sunflower, and more by heating them to typical cooking temps and measuring their stability. Guess what? Extra virgin olive oil came out on top. It produced the least amount of harmful byproducts, even compared to oils with higher smoke points. Another study out of Australia found that even when EVOO was heated to 464 degrees Fahrenheit, it remained chemically stable. More stable than many industrial oils that are often recommended for frying. Let that sink in. The very oil we retold not to heat often outperforms oils we re-encourage to use. Why don't more people know this? Personal reflection. Trusting simplicity again. I'll be honest, there was a time I avoided olive oil for stir-frying, or I bought into the fear, despite my gut telling me otherwise. But once I started diving into the actual data, I felt like I was uncovering a hidden truth. The kind of truth that makes you wonder, how many other natural foods have we feared for the wrong reasons? Cooking should be joyful. It should feel like nourishment, not like navigating a chemical lab. And the moment I brought EVOO back into my cooking routine with confidence, I noticed something. My meals tasted deeper. My digestion felt lighter. And somehow I felt more in tune with my food. Not because it was trendy, but because it was simple, real, and time-tested. Now that we've addressed the myth, the science, and the truth behind olive oil's heat resistance, in part 2, we'll break down the different types of olive oil, when to use each one for cooking and when not to, store and preserve olive oil to keep it stable. And we'll hear a real-life story from someone who swapped seed oils for EVOO. What happened to their body? Chapter 5. Not all olive oils are created equal. If you've ever stood in front of a wall of olive oil bottles at the grocery store, you've probably felt it. Confusion, extra virgin, virgin, pure, light tasting, refined, cold pressed. And they all claim to be healthy. Let's clear it up, because understanding the difference is key not just for flavor, but for safety, cooking use, and healing benefits. 1. Extra virgin olive oil EVOO. This is the good stuff. It's unrefined, meaning it's pressed naturally without heat or chemicals. Contains the highest levels of antioxidants, polyphenols, and nutrients. Has a moderate smoke point, around 374–410 degrees Fahrenheit, degrees Celsius. Ideal for roasting, drizzling, low to medium heat cooking. Personal note, this is what I use 90% of the time, even for frying eggs or lightly roasting vegetables. Why? Because EVOO Ice and Tea just not bad at heat it. S actively protective because of its antioxidants. 2. Virgin olive oil. Less common, slightly lower quality than EVOO. Still unrefined, but lower in nutrients, slightly higher smoke point. Decent option if you want to cook on slightly higher heat. 3. Refined or light olive oil. This is where things get a bit tricky. These oils have been processed using heat and chemicals. Higher smoke point, around 428–464 degrees Fahrenheit. Fewer antioxidants. Mild flavor but less health benefits. So is it safer? For very high heat cooking, maybe for nutrition, not even close to EVOO. Chapter 6. Cooking techniques, how to actually use EVOO safely. Let's talk real life for a second. You're at the stove, you're not running a food lab. So how can you use olive oil in your everyday cooking without constantly worrying about smoke points? Here's what works. Do you use EVOO for light veggies, eggs, fish? Roasting below 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Pan-searing, short duration. Moderate heat frying with good ventilation. Salad dressings and marinades, no heat needed. Avoid deep frying with EVOO, reusing olive oil after it's been heated. Letting it sit uncovered near heat or sunlight. Rule of thumb: if you're cooking with care medium heat, not leaving the pan unattended, EVOO is your friend. Chapter 7. Storage matters more than you think. Here's a small tip that makes a big difference. How you store olive oil affects how it behaves when heated. Why? Because exposure to light air heat damages the antioxidants inside the oil even before it hits the pan. Best storage tips. Keep it in a dark glass bottle. Store away from stoves or windows. Always tightly seal the bottle after use. Use within 3 to 6 months of opening for best quality. Fun fact: that olive oil bottle collecting dust next to your stove, it's already lost some of its healing power. Chapter 8. Real-world story. A small change, big impact. I want to tell you about my friend Anya. She had been struggling with chronic bloating, brain fog, and constant fatigue for years. Doctors gave her low FODMAP charts, enzyme supplements, and even suggested going gluten-free one day. She read about the inflammatory nature of refined seed oils, like soybean or corn oil, and decided to switch to extra virgin olive oil for all her cooking. That's it. No extreme diet. Just one change. Within weeks, she told me her gut felt calmer. Her skin looked clearer. And the mental fog that she thought was just normal stress, it began to lift. She didn't just change oil, she changed the foundation of her meals. That's the power of letting food be the beginning of healing. Chapter 9. A new way to think about oil. Instead of obsessing over numbers like smoke point, what if we asked better questions? Is this oil naturally made? Has it been refined or altered? Does it offer more than just calories? Does it nourish? Because food is not just fuel, it's information. And every drop of oil you use is telling your body a story. The story EVOO tells is one of ancient wisdom, scientific integrity, simplicity over industrial complexity. In part 3, we'll dive deeper into internet myths about olive oil that still won't die. why we fear natural fats and how that started, the cultural wisdom around olive oil that modern diets forgot. My final takeaway: why cooking with EVOO isn't just safe, it's sacred. Chapter 10: The Internet's Favorite Fear: Oxidation and Free Radicals. Let's revisit one of the loudest claims out there. Once olive oil hits the pan, it oxidizes and produces dangerous free radicals. Sounds terrifying, right? But let's unpack this. Oxidation happens when fats react with oxygenous. Free radicals are unstable molecules. Yes, but here's what those viral warnings leave out. Oxidation isn't binary. It happens gradually, not instantly. Olive oil's antioxidants help delay that breakdown. And most importantly, all oils oxidize eventually if they low in antioxidants like seed oils. So let's not fear EVOO for what it might do under extreme heat. Let's look at what it's already proven to do under regular cooking conditions. Resist degradation, preserve flavor, support health. Chapter 11: Why are we so afraid of natural fats? Let's take a step back. For decades, we were taught fat equals bad, low fat equals healthy. Butter, olive oil, even avocados used sparingly. It wasn't until recently that mainstream science started reversing course. But here's what's fascinating. Traditional cultures never feared fats like we did. In Greece, Italy, Morocco, olive oil wasn't just accepted, it was celebrated. Used in cooking, skincare, medicine, and even spiritual rituals. So the real question isn't, is olive oil safe? The real question is, how did we get so disconnected from ancestral wisdom that we had to ask that at all? Chapter 12: A Moment of Cultural Reflection. In ancient Crete, olive oil was considered sacred. Children were anointed with it. Bread was dipped in it before prayers. Families passed down trees like heirlooms. Compare that to today where we stress about smoke points while buying ultra-processed seed oils in plastic jugs because they read cheaper. Maybe it's not just about safety. Maybe it's about reconnecting with food that has a story, a soul, a lineage. Every spoon of EVOO carries history. Not just calories or fat percentages, but the memory of hands that harvested, pressed, and poured. Chapter 13: What I've learned personally. There was a time I believed that the best oil was the one that never smoked. I looked at cooking like a lab experiment. Control the numbers, minimize the mess. But food isn't sterile, it's alive. It whispers to us if we slow down enough to hear. Once I stopped fearing the little curls of smoke rising from my pan, once I honored olive oil not as macros but as medicine, something shifted. I enjoyed cooking more. I ate slower. I felt more at peace in my kitchen. Not because I followed the perfect chart, but because I trusted the wisdom of real food. Chapter 14: So, should you cook with olive oil? Let's come back to the question we started with. Is olive oil safe to cook with? If you've followed this journey with me, you already know the answer. Yes, absolutely yes. As long as you're using real EVOO, not light blends, cooking on medium or moderate heat, storing it properly, and not obsessing over arbitrary numbers like smoke point alone, then you're not just safe, you're supported. By science, by tradition, by thousands of years of lived wisdom. Chapter 15: Final takeaway. Simplicity is sacred. In a world full of noise, clickbait, nutrition headlines, fad oils, and confusion, EVOO offers something rare: simplicity, clarity, ancient trust. It's not just what you cook, it's what you believe about nourishment. Let's stop fearing real food. Let's stop reducing olive oil to numbers. And let us start remembering that the best health advice often comes in glass bottles from the oldest trees. Have you ever used EVOO for cooking? Was there a moment you changed your oil and noticed your body change too? Share your story in the comments. I want this to be a space where we rebuild trust with food together. And if this video helped you rethink something you feared for too long, Please share it with someone who deserves to eat without anxiety again.